Tasuketsu Fate of the Majority just started airing. I was going to make a video on this last night, but I made so many copious notes I was just like, my brain can't handle it, doing it tomorrow morning. So here we are. My main reason for picking up this show from episode 1, and hopefully covering it episode to episode, is that this will be a 2-core back-to-back season 1, meaning we get 24 episodes of potentially great mystery goodness. I also love, sort of death game-esque anime like this is trying to be, but it will all be tied to how good the writing and narrative is, which we will have to see how it actually develops. Now, to give a quick synopsis here, we have our main character. Mom is dead because, of course, classical anime parent is dead. Father is living abroad, so for all intents and purposes, he's also dead. Well, practically speaking. He has some friends from school. He goes to high school. Very average, normal guy, but his only quirk is that he doesn't like computers or technology, I guess. Kind of like my grandpa, I suppose. And then everything goes to shit, where everyone seems to die in this city, and only some people remain. And it's all tied to this question that they got. And then each day, we find out that now this game has begun, where the people left alive will be asked the question, and everyone that is on the majority side of the question will die, until eventually there's only one left who will maybe get an audience with the so-called Emperor, which is the main antagonist introduced in the show. Now that is the very basic premise and synopsis for what this show is trying to be, right? Very death game-esque, mystery-esque. And that's what I want to dive a bit more into. The concept, the premise. Because I love these sort of shows, right? At least from a technical standpoint, I love what these sort of shows can be. I love a show that can really, with clever writing of course, create these super interesting psychological dilemmas. How characters might turn against each other, how groups might turn against other groups, or turn against themselves within groups, and create these super tense, high-stress situations where you're always maneuvering, you're always trying to figure out what's going on, who's on your side, who's not, and figure out this mystery and game at the same time. I mean, I love that sort of stuff. And that's seemingly what this anime is also going for, with multiple, let's say, betrayals in episode 1 within their own in-group, and the whole mystery at large. They did do a generally okay good job, I feel, in episode 1 to introduce this ominous antagonist. And what do the messages mean? What do the questions mean? Who is this emperor? How is he doing this? What's going on? They set up a lot of questions in episode 1 that I assume we will not get answers to for a long time. But they made me interested enough to be like, okay, yeah, I want to know more. I want to delve into this world and try to understand this game and how it progresses. Another thing that this does well with its concept and execution so far is that they are actually taking some time to try to lock down how the game works, right? The rules, the premise of how things work, special abilities, privileges as they're called here, and other things, trying to just clue the audience in, okay, this is how things work, this is how things don't work, and this is what the characters can do. Of course, with a lot of things still in the gray zone because we haven't explored those things yet, which I also talked about in episode 1. Hey, what can we actually do? Is this going to be allowed? Is this going to be allowed? But so far, they've done an okay job of introducing this system and not just dillying over it to actually try to get the viewer invested in, okay, how does this work? But that does also lead to my biggest problem in episode 1, and that is my immersion problem. Now, what I mean by that is that while I can enjoy the death game that has started here, while I can enjoy the mystery concept and things they are trying to go with, I still didn't feel very immersed at all. And there are multiple reasons for that. First of all, I'm just not invested in the world yet. I'm not invested in the characters yet. Like, they went balls to the wall and just did this whole let's kill off basically everyone, 10 minutes or less into episode 1. And while I can appreciate a show just going straight to the point, it also does not allow for me, or us the viewers, to actually make a connection with the characters. We are barely introduced to our main character and his so-called best friend before suddenly the best friend and most other people are dead. How can I be immersed with that, right? How can I even care about this sudden best friend that is now dead when I only saw him make a few one-liners and jokes with our main character before he was gone? Like, that doesn't help anything or anyone with making a connection or getting invested in this world or in this show. I would have much rather preferred them to take the slow approach, especially given this is a 2-core back-to-back season, that hey, you can take at least one whole episode, maybe even 2, to delve into this world and try to have us know the characters, right? The main character, flesh him out some, flesh out, let's say, his best friend or a few other characters, and get us invested in, okay, what's going on here? What are the relationships like between these characters? And get us just somewhat invested. And then maybe, let's say, for example, at the end of episode 2, bam, suddenly, then you can have this whole everyone dies. And then that'll have much more impact when, for example, the best friend dies at the end of episode 2 in this hypothesis. Then you'll be like, oh shit, he's dead? Like, who else is dead, right? It would have way more impact on you as the viewer after having been able to be properly, well, at least way more invested in that character and many others as well. But considering how quickly they did it, again, it just ended up with me not having the most investment in what was going on. And this continues throughout episode 1 as well, with other things that did not feel supernatural, right? First of all, when our main character goes to the school after being contacted by the survivors after this cataclysmic event, they all seem calm. Like, really? None of you are having a mental breakdown. None of you are like crying in the corner, wanting to go home after learning and seeing that your whole families are dead. Everyone on the street is dead. There's bodies lying all around. Like, you're seriously saying that none of you are having any sort of mental breakdowns right now, or otherwise just cracking under pressure. You're all just seemingly decently normal, except for a few outbursts from a couple characters, but that don't feel super impactful. Like, when something like this happens in a otherwise normal world, I would at least expect to see, horrified looks on their faces, seeing some people be breaking down in the corner, having like severe mental collapses, or just really feeling the severity, feeling the intensity of what the heck is going on here, But because of the seemingly lax atmosphere, even after something as drastic as this happens, it doesn't really help with building my immersion in the show at all. And that is really too bad. Yes, you have a few characters that kind of raise their voice or have more of a reaction to a couple of things, but nowhere near the level that I would say is appropriate when something like this happens. Even if they would have just not added in, let's say, super high-pitched raised voices or showcased, let's say, people having mental breakdowns and stuff like that, at least they could have spent the time to really have some close-up shots with crisp animation of facial expressions being just totally off-putting, right? Seeing the faces of these people being just shell-shocked, being in denial of what has just happened. Just anything like that would have helped a lot with the immersion at this point in time in episode 1. But alas, I'll let it go for now. Funnily enough, the main character actually asks the wannabe girlfriend later in the episode, is like, hey, how were you so calm the first day after we met at school? Like, wow, main character, I was wondering the exact same thing. Thank you for asking. And then she just gives some semi-basic explanation of, well, the council president, he pulled us all in and sort of put us to work and kept us calm and structured. And it's like, okay, I can maybe buy that in some way or form, but like at the same time, that is not really a suitable explanation considering the severity of what has just happened. And it's also not a good narrative device. Like, if you're in a writing room and you write something in a way that you have to sort of explain it to the viewer after the fact by having characters talk to each other, that is not the best way to do things, and you should avoid that whenever you can. But alas, I guess we get at least some explanation, which is better than nothing. So, good for you, I suppose, main character. The other part of episode 1 that really made me feel like, really, you're really just forcing this, and that broke my immersion in another way, was this weird, sort of awkward romance scene, multiple romance scenes, with this female character and this male MC character, and how suddenly they're like trying to be close. And of course, our MC being sort of soy and embarrassed and running away from it. At the time, I felt like, okay, why are we doing this? What's this setting up for? I mean, I suppose I can understand that people, especially females, want to build some sort of connection in a time like this because everyone's dying. They just want to feel safe, maybe, or build some sort of connection so they can feel like they have something in this dire situation. Like, okay, I can suppose buy that. But it still felt awkward and a bit forced. And then later in the episode, at the end of the episode, when we have, of course, the big plot twist that, oh, the MC is dead, assumingly. Then you suddenly have this sort of cry out from this heroine character. It's like, I'll get you, Emperor. Though that voice acting hurt my ears, I have to say. That scream was not good. But then I realized, oh, so you just made this whole forced romance thing in episode 1. in the last 10 minutes of episode 1, purely to set up this, whoever survives will go get the Emperor, right? Yeah, promise. And then one of them dies. And then you get this revenge, justice sort of scream. Like, really? You forced this in episode 1, purely to get this quote-unquote payoff at the end of the episode with this cliffhanger. I mean, that's a stretch. That is not good. That's not good writing at all. Like, that is not something I can condone in any way or shape or form. Like, they could have done that in such a better way. Again, same reason why I would have liked an episode or even 2 of them just being in this world before everything goes to shit. They could have spent that time as well. Let's say if they had 2 episodes before the end of episode 2, let's say this thing happens, to explore maybe this relationship. Or they could have maybe put it in like, okay, maybe this girl actually was a childhood friend of our main character and they had some sort of emotional connection from when they were kids. But maybe they've grown distant the last years. But then, they're sort of rekindling their friendship when this crisis happens, if they didn't want to have these 2 episodes to set up. Okay, that would have been more believable. But instead, these 2 people that seemingly have no prior connection at all, suddenly being thrust into this semi-romance relationship is just super awkward. Or in the case where they would have spent like 2 episodes building up the world before this goes down, they could have spent that time at the same time also maybe showing the connection that these 2 characters have, or build that up. Like maybe they flirt a bit, or they're sort of familiar with each other, and at least just sort of slowly build that up and hint at that before going into this in maybe episode 3 in that hypothetical. But yeah, that was probably the weakest part of the episode by far and felt the most awkward. But again, these aren't just show breaking errors. Like, I can sort of accept this and just go along with it. Like, okay, they wanted to get this set up to explore other things throughout the season. Okay, I can accept that. But it does ring a few alarm bells that they did this, that they wrote things and characters and narratives like this already. Because as I believe I mentioned at the start of the video, this sort of show is ride or die, end all be all, completely dependent on how good the writing and narrative is, so it doesn't fall apart. And if this is the writing they think they can get away with, that might be some red flags moving forward in episode, or rather season 1. Now, before I get into the game here, if you are enjoying the episode, or enjoying the video rather, please remember to like and subscribe. Greatly helps out the channel. Deeply appreciate your support, so thank you for sticking so far with me in the video. Now, let's talk a bit about the game and the mystery. Like the main draw of this anime, right? As I said before, yeah, okay, cool. I can give it props in a way for just going balls to the wall. Okay, episode 1, straight into the action. Everyone's dead. Okay, let's start the game. I mean, okay, sure. In one sense, I can appreciate that. And the game itself, so far, seems interesting enough. We have the Emperor, we have these privileges you can get, we have these sort of undeclared rules of what might be allowed, not allowed, that we don't know yet. We have a decently good, semi-strong setup of how we can progress this further. So all those things are acceptable to decently good. So kudos. I like how they are portraying the main character to be intelligent, right? He's quick on his feet. He's good at analyzing and realizing things, sort of taking the role of the viewer, right? To walk us through things in his head, like, could this be the case? Could this be the case? What's going on here? For example, when he talks about, the council president died. Okay, but how did he get to the school so fast? The trains were down on the first day. So how did he get to school? How did he even get there first? Is he part of this somehow, right? Just exploring these questions and really making the viewer think of a lot of potential different angles. And that's good. I like that. That just builds up the atmosphere and the potential plot lines and storylines and narratives of like, what is going on here? Who is the bad guy? Do some of these other characters have underlying motives, or have they made some sort of deal with the devil, or like, well, what's going on? And that happened multiple times in episode 1, and those things I can appreciate. How they generally unveiled the game and how the rules are set was also done decently well, and something I can gel with. And also how they are just killing off characters quickly, like the council president seemed to be at first a semi-permanent character that's going to be there to restore order and such. But no, he's just dead too. Though maybe he's not dead after the synopsis that our main character sort of thought through. But who knows, we'll see. But then also just exploring very quickly how even this in-group, who seemingly agreed to work together, can just shatter. Which raised a lot of other questions like, okay, this one guy who sort of took up the mantle after the council president was dead, he just finds a gun on the street. And I guess he just sort of decides to kill everyone. because that's his view of how to win the game. So I guess he sort of mentally snapped. Who would have thought? And then the conversations he has, for example, with the small purple something boy, and after that, seemingly he says he's narrowed down who the Emperor is, because I guess he just wants to kill him, though we have no idea what exactly he knows. Also have no idea how this small purple-haired guy, who was dead to rights, and he was going to shoot him, but he survives somehow, which I assume will be explained later by a privilege, because seemingly the character that was with the gun and going all around trying to shoot people seemed to be forced to tell the truth when he was asked a question, which plays into the whole, okay, what are privileges? We only get explained slightly what a privilege is in this episode, that they have special powers of some sort, and they have to be used wisely. Yeah, like privilege, special privilege, you can only have one of each. And it's seemingly, assumingly, privilege that this small purple-haired boy has something to do with him being able to control actions because he survived somehow. And that is another thing that, again, this first episode does decently well, and that is setting up a lot of questions. Like, you're wondering a ton of things. How did this guy survive? What did this guy learn? Why is he suddenly on the murdering spree? Who's the Emperor? What's the game? How does all this work? And setting up a lot of questions is not a bad thing, inherently. If we don't get answers over the season, that will be bad. But considering we have 23 more episodes, hopefully all of this will be explained in due time and in a satisfying way. Also, the biggest twist, of course, in episode 1 is this whole that, okay, since the majority dies after every question in this game, our main character decides that, we can't just wait till one person is alive, we have to kill the Emperor, and that's assumingly his goal. But at the end of episode 1, this main character and the heroine character, I suppose, somehow, for some reason, choose to answer differently on the question of male or female, because I assume that they decided that, okay, at least one has to survive, let's answer differently. And we see that, oh, shocker, the main character is dead. Now, it would actually be very funny if they just actually kill off the main character, the titular character basically, in episode 1. It's like, Sykes, he wasn't the main character after all. But I can't imagine that's actually the case, considering he's like front and center on the poster for the anime, etc. So it would be humorous for a short time. Now, of course, even though he is quote-unquote dead seemingly after episode 1, I very much assume that they'll pull a, well, he picked up this privilege card earlier in the episode, and he didn't look at it. He was going to look at it later. But since he picked it up, maybe it's some sort of cheat death thing, or something that allows him to resurrect or not die. But then, assumingly, I imagine that maybe he'll just go his own way, sort of investigate on his lonesome, and not come back to the group right away. And then have a sort of a reunion with the group, with this heroine character later down the line, and then things will really start to heat up at that time. That's at least my, theory from watching episode 1, how it might develop moving forward. Again, there are a ton of routes this anime can take, and they definitely tried to sort of have a semi-impactful and shocking episode 1. I mean, suddenly, halfway into the episode or less, having everyone be dead, basically. Okay, shocker number 1, and end of episode 1, main character is dead. Okay, well, shocker number 2. They definitely seem to be going for a sort of high impact, like, wow, that happened. Sort of like a Game of Thrones-esque feeling of, ah, shit, no way that just happened, right? If that is the sort of thing they want to try to have happen, at least often enough, and not just have it be like an episode 1 shock value thing, then that can be interesting, having a lot of just insane twists and turns, as long as it's, again, written well, the narrative is solid, the logic of the game and characters are solid, and it's all just well made. In that case, yeah, that can be really fun and really intriguing down the line. Though again, of course, we're only in the beginning stages, so we have no idea yet, but I can have hope anyway. Overall though, it's not a horrible episode 1. No, there are things to like about it, there are things not to like about it. My immersion problem being the biggest negative for me right now, but if they just did this to sort of set up what they want to explore moving forward, then I can accept it as like, okay, fine episode 1 things. Now let's get into the action. Now let's get into the rest of the story. And as long as the writing is good, as long as the narrative is good, as long as they are really taking care to make this a vibrant world and game and have a ton of interesting characters and plot twists and whatnot over this 24 episode season, then yeah, it might be a very sort of hidden gem over the next couple of anime seasons. Anyhow, though, what do you think of episode 1? If you watched it, like it, hate it, leave all those comments down below. And of course, if you have any questions for me or thoughts on the video, anything else, leave everything down below. I will read and answer everything that comes up. But with that being said, there are a lot of big shows starting later today, so I have to get this uploaded and published ASAP. Anyhow, though, I hope you have a good day, keep watching anime, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.